actually before you go to sleep. Right. Core stuff to do with working with crystals. Cleansing crystals, choosing crystals, cleansing crystals. Yep. Oh, we like that.
What do you want to do first?
Cleansing, maybe. I don't know.
Cleansing.
Yeah.
As we talked about the energetic qualities of crystals, when you first get a crystal, if it's from a shop or anything, then it's not a delicate soft crystal, then it's a good idea to give it a good scrub with soapy water, just to get rid of grime and dust and whatever. But only if it's a fairly substantial, if it's tumbled stone or something like that, then it's a good idea to give it a physical clean. But what we're mainly talking about with cleansing crystals is energetic cleansing. And energetic cleansing means basically keeping the crystal as close to its natural state as possible. Because the crystal lattice will absorb, reflect and change, it tends to I'll say absorb, but that might not be the case, but it's good enough. It's a good enough analogy. It will absorb imbalances in its environment. And a crystal will naturally, over time, revert to its normal state of harmony and balance. But sometimes that can be over quite a period of time. So if we're working with crystals in a healing context, we need to make sure that those crystals are cleansed before and after we use them. So we always get into the habit of cleansing all the crystals that we've used after we've used them.
So on your couches, there is a little box with a selection of crystals in, and these will basically be the work kits that you will be using when you're doing your practical ones. So this means you haven't got to worry about where you can get your crystals from when we start doing the practical stuff, because you've got a really good selection there that covers virtually everything we do. And they went away clean. It's always best. Then you're never in any doubt when you want to start working whether your crystals are clean or not, because you know you put them away clean.
Now there's lots of ways of cleansing, energetically cleansing crystals. Some are more practically valuable than others. But it's a good idea that you know the whole range of methods, so that in different circumstances you can use one a lot easier than another. And one of the best ways, but the most awkward ways as far as practically cleansing crystals, is holding them under running water, and that can be just under a tap. And that's it's a physical sensory thing where you're holding the crystal under the water, and you can imagine also that any imbalances is going out of the crystal. But in terms of doing that sort of thing in crystal therapy in winter in the UK, then it can be tedious and not very practical.
And also, if you do that, it's always a good idea to put a colander or something underneath, so that if you drop the crystals, they don't go down the plug hole. There's nothing worse than having to retrieve something that's gone down the plug hole.
It's a nice idea to cleanse crystals in streams, under trees, or in the sea, but you will lose most of your crystals that way.
Unless you put them.
You have a beautiful clear crystal, you put it in the river, it disappears. One, because you can't see it when it's in the water, and two, because it will roll away. So it's a nice idea, but the tap is probably the safest for using water.
And certainly if you're working as a therapist, it's not practical to go backwards and forwards doing that.
It's okay if you're doing just one person that day, but if you're seeing people after people, you don't want to be. You've got to have access to water and tap, so you've got to have other ways to do it.
Traditional ways to use incense smoke or smudge. Again, there are pros and cons of this, let alone smoke detectors, depending where you're working. Not everybody likes the smell of sage or lavender. If you're going to make your own, there's lavender around at the moment, there's mugwort in the hedgerows, you can make your own stuff, no problem. but not everybody likes the smell. So sometimes that might not be the best way to do it. In situations like we have here, we tend to do one of two ways. One is to use a singing bowl when you pop your crystals in there, and depending how skilled you are about getting in the bowl to sing.
The advantage with a singing bowl, especially one with a flat base, is that you can put quite a few crystals in there at one time, and it's actually physically vibrating the structure of the crystals. So it's sort of shuggling it around so that you can get rid of stuff really quickly. So cleaning with bowls is very good. If you don't have bowls but you have bells, tincture or other high frequency things, you can use that as well. But bowls, because if you imagine yourself sitting in a singing bowl when it's being played, that's what the crystal is experiencing. So it's quite a strong experience, even for a few seconds.
So use of sound is another way, but again, depending on who you're working on, is whether and how often you're going to be doing this, is actually whether it's person friendly or not. But it's usually if you're working with someone who's familiar with it, that's actually okay. They'll get used to doing.
So can I just ask, do you have to, because I've seen that technique and thought it was great, and then someone said that you had to have a certain pitch on this singing bowl.
No, because any old sound will do it. It doesn't have to be a particular one. It's like, you can get them tuned to F, G, whatever, which have got other reasons for the resonance. But anything that sings, it's like with tincture, that's really piercing. And it really does clean things really, really well. That's right, it's just going off to get the lump. But it doesn't have to be a particular sound, a particular note. In fact, sometimes something with a slight dissonance is actually quite useful.
I'm sorry, would you cleanse your bowl before you start using it?
No, you don't need to, because it's cleanses its using. Yeah. The nice thing about a lot of these is that they're metals anyway. I mean, some of the traditional ones are actually the 7 metals, but a lot of them, there's a few at the back there as well, slightly smaller. And this is quite a big one. But and if they don't sing initially, if you buy one it doesn't sing, you just need to keep going, because eventually all the molecules will line up and you'll get it singing nicely. But it is a knack, but it doesn't take much to get the knack to go. One of the things that we tend to do when we're in this sort of situation is we tend to use sprays. This particular spray is the one that was actually designed for cleaning the crystals. It actually hasn't got any gem essences in it. It's just got trees in it as a mix. And it literally, you just do a quick spray. Usually people do it far too much and soak everything. You actually don't need very much, because it's the vibration of the essences that actually release. And there are ones here that are cleansing. You've got white poplar that's cleansing. Laburnum that's cleansing. You've got fig that actually returns things to their natural state, which is actually what you're after. And there's elder, which is like, smooth.
What's the name of that combination?
This one's Earth Light. But any spray, certainly any spray that we do, and most people do, will do the job. Any spray that's designed for human aura cleansing will also, or room cleansing, will do the job for crystals. So if you find one you like, then that's absolutely fine.
Is part of it the intention then? Or you think it's a bit more than that?
What, with sprays?
Or any of this really? Spray in particular, yeah. Sorry.
No, sprays has actually got essences in it that do the job. Intention, the drawback you have with intention, like you find that some people will just pick up a crystal and they will sort of just go with the intention of cleansing it through. The drawback with that is how clear was their intention when they did it. And it's like you need actually to be very focused even to keep your attention for a little while. And I must admit, if I knew that someone had used that crystal on somebody who was really, really emotionally uptight and then used it on me, I wouldn't be a happy bunny. Yeah, I would far sooner see something more deeper going on. To actually get it clean.
Is there a length of time? Because sometimes when I'm cleaning them under the water, you're thinking, am I doing it enough? Am I not doing it enough?
Instinct, if not, it's like we will be doing tomorrow. Once you've got the handle, use your pendulum. If you're not sure, you just say, okay. is it enough? Or if you can muscle test, self-test, have I done it enough? Yeah. Now there are two methods that you wouldn't do in a therapy situation, but you might end up having to do after a therapy situation. Now, if you've got something that, or maybe you bought something and that really just instinctively you think, oh, this does not feel good, but I do like the crystal. Right? There's one way you can do where you put the crystal in a dish, and what you need is dry sea salt or dry salt. In other words, we're not talking salt solution here. Salt solution, not a good idea. We'll talk about that in a minute. But dry sea salt piled all over the suspect crystal and left overnight. Please don't use the sea salt in your food afterwards. Yeah, it needs to be ditched if you've done that. Now, salt has an incredibly powerful cleansing ability, and if you've really got something that's pretty tacky and you're not sure, that's what you would do. If it's really bad, then you probably need to go and bury it in the garden. If the crystals, but put a stick where you buried your crystal, because otherwise you're not going to find it again. Okay, but again, clay or soil is really, really good cleanser. So it's got something that's really, someone's given you a crystal where the crystal's lovely, but the person giving it, you think, oh, I'm not sure about that, you know. And you just instinctively think that none of the other methods are quite going to hit the mark, then you need to tackle one of these deep cleaning methods. Because when it comes down to it, you have got to be sure inside yourself that it's okay. If you're unsure, then that lack of security will actually come through the work you do. So a lot of it, you have got to be sure in yourself. So intention does have a little bit to play, but it's got to be intention that's got a foundation in some sort of firm reality rather than just in wishful thinking. Yeah. So the burying bit works really, really well. Now, the reason why we say salt solution not good, which will also therefore go for seawater not good, is that when you've got that, you've got crystal in a solution. And if you've got something that has got crystals itself, the little salt particles get inside the crystals and they will damage the surface of some. So it's a good idea probably to avoid using salt solution of any sort if you can, because it's very hard to get rid of the actual saltness afterwards. And of course things like malachite, fluorite, it will actually damage the surface because salt solution will take the top layer of so if you've got something nicely polished, it takes the top layer of molecules off, so you end up something that becomes dull. So is that sort of fairly straightforward? And the reason you cleanse is to get your crystal back to the best it can be in its natural state. So if it's been used or it's been sitting somewhere where it might have absorbed something, it gets it back to as near as it can be. So it's a bit like sort of efficiency, really. And get into the habit of always putting things away clean. Because it comes onto jewellery as well. You know, especially ladies wear quite a bit of jewellery. It does make you think sometimes, particularly if you've inherited a piece of jewellery, maybe you need to give it a bit of a clean before you wear it. And even then, if you gave it to somebody who was good at psychometry, you know, picking up vibrations, they'll probably still be able to describe the person that gave it to you. So it's like stuff that's worn like that for a long time inevitably carries. It's like Simon was saying just now, the memory of it does make you wonder sometimes about how that goes. But certainly crystal, jewellery stuff, it's a good idea to bear it in mind that it does need cleaning periodically, not just a physical clean but an energetic clean as well. Okay, so any other questions? Anyone come across any other methods?
Tuning forks.
It's basically sound, same as that. Yeah.
And I have some vortex cards. There's a vortex card that you can put with the principal crystal, and you douse for the principal crystal in the house.
And then it will clean the rest.
And then it cleans all the other stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that one, so what does that do?
It's a vortex card. It's one that in the house, if you put it under one, it will, the right one, it will clean the rest.
What about sunlight?
Sunlight charges more than cleans.
Oh, so with moonlight?
Yeah. The drawback with sunlight is things like amethyst will pale off in sunlight if it's particularly strong. But certainly if you want to give your crystals an extra oomph, then that comes under charging. So yes, sunlight and moonlight, thunderstorms, if you want to give your crystals a bath and you don't want to stick your hands under the tap, then stick them out in the next thunderstorm that comes along, so that they get the rain and they get the weather extreme as well, because that does the job too. Yeah, but it will charge and clean in those sort of things. So charging is not something that everybody does. Okay, it's one of those things that sometimes you might suddenly have an instinct, and then ship them out. Do you charge your lot of crystals before they go on sale?
Yes.
You do
go through
tincture
a
them?
whole big process.
You do. You've got a big process, yeah. And it's a mostly visualisation process.
No, not always, because it depends on where they've come from as well, and obviously the shipping has obviously been handled by somebody.
So you've got all that sort of stuff. You've got to get that out.
Always the biggest process.
So it's cleanse that out and then bring them back up.
Yeah, and then we always do a blessing so that they're kind of blank canvases for people to then come along.
Yeah. And that's ideally what you're trying to produce as a therapist, so that they are blank canvases. I've seen people at Mind Body Wallet, as I call it, the big one in London, actually first thing in the morning, program their crystals to be sold.
No.
And I must admit, because I was working there as an astrologer, and I sort of, and thought, shut up, don't say words, sort of thing. And I thought, I haven't just seen what I've seen. And I can understand it, especially something like mine, because the cost of the stands is just like, up there. But it's also, because that brings on to another thing, is that, if you can charge and you can cleanse, you can also affect things in another way. You see? And that basically brings us on to things like programming. And like I said, I saw that lady program her crystals, which was with the intention, having got them all nice and clean, to sell. You can buy crystals that have been programmed for particular healing modes, things particularly want to do. And if you do that sort of thing, it's good to pick a crystal that naturally does that sort of thing anyway. Because you think about it, here's you, human being, years old, crystal, 1,000 years old, telling the crystal what he wants to do. It's like, in crystal terms, 2 fingers up at whoever thinks that they're mad enough to actually do it. You can see that you've got to be able to get your head round it a bit to be able to do that sort of thing. But it can be very, very useful. And we will be going through ways that it can be done, because you never know when you might need to know how to do that for a particular client or a situation for yourself where you need a very specific sort of support. So we'll be going through that later. It's 2 ways of programming. It's what's called passive and active. Passive stuff you probably do all the time without realising it, but the active stuff you have to watch that the old ego doesn't sort of hop in. Okay.
Quick question about charging in sunlight.
Yeah.
Does it still work through glass? Do they have to actually be out in
I think
sunlight?
It still does. A certain amount of UV will come through the glass, depending on the glass, of course.
But there's still a difference between
There will still be
outside.
a difference. But then it does beg the question of indifference, like UK sunlight's a bit weaker wibbly compared to some, But I think it's the sort of thing that particularly if you want to do that, if you muscle test or douse, you just say, how long do I need to do it for? or put them out for half an hour and say, right, are they cooked yet?
Yeah.
But you have to, I say amethyst is one you have to watch. And of course, if for some reason you've got some dyed crystals amongst your mix, for whatever reason, they may also pale off in the sun as well. And if you bought them for their colour, because you're using it for a colour particular thing, then that can be something that you